Hi everybody, it's me, Juan from Just One Reader. I haven't posted a video in a week, or has it been over a week? I don't know, but I have missed you guys. I've missed this, whatever this relationship is, and I've missed this place, wherever we are, this kind of weird phenomenon that we have going on. Anyway, I have another recent reads wrap-up episode. This is going to be recent reads numbers 15, 16, and 17. So these are the last 3 books that I have read in 2018, and I haven't done a lot of reading lately. That's why I haven't posted like reading related videos that often lately this week. But it's because one of the books that I'm going to talk to you about today was actually kind of a drag, and even though I respect it and admire it, it really put me in a kind of a reading slump, and it sort of took me on a weird kind of phase of not wanting to read that much. But I'll get to that later. So first I'm gonna mention the books, so if you are interested in hearing my thoughts on these books, please stay and watch, and if you're not interested in any of them, just go and watch something more fun. So firstly, I'm gonna talk about The Dragonfly Pool by Eva Ibbotson. Then I have The Lord of the Rings, The Fellowship of the Ring by Tolkien, of course, J.R.R. Tolkien. I think you know which Tolkien I'm talking about, John Ronald Reuel. And then finally, Pride and Prejudice, which, spoiler alert, is the book that got me kind of in a reading slump. Not really a slump, because I read it, but I just didn't really want to read at my regular pace, with my regular rhythm, but I'll get to that in a second. So firstly, let's start at the very beginning, a very good place to start. Book number 15 that I've read in 2018 was The Dragonfly Pool. This is a young adult classical feeling novel by Eva Ibbotson, who is a wonderful writer that I really, really love. She wrote a lot of children's fiction and also young adult fiction, and she's just a very nice, warm, cozy kind of author that if you really want to read something cozy and magical and classical feeling with very vivid, colorful characters and with beautiful settings, mostly in Europe, then I strongly recommend this author. Now, this is The Dragonfly Pool, and oh man, I adored it. I loved it so much. It's kind of a book that has it all. It has a lot of ingredients. It's kind of a convoluted, complex story. It involves a lot of characters, a lot of storylines that, of course, at the end kind of meet and they become one interwoven kind of mega story. It takes place firstly in London in the Second World War II, and we follow this protagonist who's a child named Tally, who's a very, very good, polite, nice young girl, and she is evacuated kind of to a college, not a college, well, yeah, to kind of magical, not magical like in Harry Potter, actually magical kind of way, but like to a magical feeling, exuberant and eccentric boarding school somewhere in England, in kind of a coastal town, I think. And she goes there and she has these crazy adventures, which then in turn take her to another country in Europe. And we have a lot of things going on in this book, but it's so great. We have criticisms, social criticisms, topics and subject matter that is quite adult and quite relevant today. So it's a very nice, charming story. It's 400 pages of fun and delight, and just feeling that your cheeks are hurting because you are smiling all the time when you're reading it. But it's also a very good book to read thinking critically. So I loved it. I gave it 4 stars. Strongly recommend it. Afterwards, I read The Lord of the Rings, The Fellowship of the Ring, which is the first volume in this trilogy, which is not really a trilogy. It's one book split into 3 different volumes, this one being the first one. So I honestly, like, honest to God, I don't know what took possession over me and made me read The Lord of the Rings. I don't know. It was not planned. You know me. If you know me, you know that I am very controlling, and I love to obsess and to have everything in my TBR strictly planned. And I don't know what happened. This was not a part of my 2018 TBR. I did not see it coming. I've had these books in my shelf for literally decades. And so, okay, a little bit of backstory here. So this is backstory time. I originally read The Lord of the Rings when I was like 12. Very young to be reading this, I think. I read these books when I was that age because I had just finished watching all the movies. You know, these movies, which are amazing, came out when I was very young, pretty much at the same time that the Harry Potter movies were coming out, the first ones at least. And so I remember being in a movie theater watching the Lord of the Rings movies at the premiere and just being immersed, like, in just feeling exactly the way that I am right now, just having no words to express how I was feeling and what I was seeing in front of me. These movies were everything. But I never, like I said, I read the books when I was 12, but I never really loved them. I liked them. I don't know if I was too young to really appreciate them, but I think my kind of not love for The Lord of the Rings was caused by my loving Harry Potter so much. So basically, when I was growing up, you only had three choices of identity, and you had to choose one. It was one or the other. You could not choose more than one. And those were Harry Potter, The Lord of the Rings, and then, unfortunately, Twilight. So you had those three options around which you would structure your identity. I was very young. I swear I was not stupid. This was just how my teenage mind worked. And I immediately, of course, chose Harry Potter. So I just based my life, my entire being, my entire existence around Harry Potter. And that's why I didn't really care all that much about Lord of the Rings, although I did like it. But now, backstory time is over. Let's get back to my actual experience reading The Lord of the Rings at age 26. It feels like the first time that I'm reading this. It feels like the first time. Because, you know, I read them like 14 years ago, so it doesn't count. This book was just everything. This book took me into, like, I never expected to read this book and love it as much as I did. Just from the prologue. The prologue is Tolkien playing the historian, I guess, and talking about the hobbits and what they do, where they come from, what are they like, what do they like to eat, what do they like to smoke. It's very anthropological, biological, historical feeling. It reads like nonfiction in a way, but I was so into this just from the prologue. And then, of course, in the actual book, when the story kicks off and we start with the Shire and Frodo and Bilbo and Gandalf and all these hobbits, Sam and Pippin and Merry, it was, I never expected to enjoy myself as much. I actually was, honestly, I was kind of expecting this to be a little bit of a drag and a little bit dry and too descriptive and too boring, because that's what most people feel about this book. They like it, but they always talk about how descriptive it is and how boring and dull it can be. So I was expecting that, and oh man, I read this book in like 3 days, so I loved it. I mean, yeah, there were some parts that I think maybe could have been a little bit more, like, maybe they could have been more developed, especially the characters. I really like the characters, and considering this is the first book in the Lord of the Rings, I understand that this is how he presents these characters. I just wished we had gotten a little bit more of them, a little bit more complexity, and a little bit more layers. But I'm pretty sure that's kind of a dumb criticism to make at this point, because he has 2 more volumes in the trilogy to make up for that. So I love this. I gave it, I think, 4 stars or 4.5 stars. I cannot believe that I am finally coming to a place and in my life when I am 26 and I am discovering Tolkien. Just wow. I was missing out on so much. And finally, book number 17 was Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen. This is the first book in my year of reading classics. I don't know why I decided that 2018 was going to be my year of reading classics and trying to see how much I enjoy them. And, well, this is kind of a rocky start to that whole project. I won't say that I didn't like this book, because I don't know if I liked it, honestly, but I will say that I absolutely understand its place in literature and in feminism and gender studies and everything. It's a very interesting book, and that's pretty much my biggest criticism. It's very interesting. It's well written. It is, it has amazing dialogue. It is very funny at times. It's very witty and very clever and very smart. But I didn't really enjoy it, and that's kind of a letdown for me in a way. And none of this comes from me being a guy, and, you know, guys cannot enjoy Jane Austen, and guys don't value Jane Austen, and women's literature, chick lit. I hate that concept. It's got nothing to do with that. I just found it boring. An example just to show you how little I care about gender roles when it comes to art. I just discovered Gilmore Girls, the TV series from the early 2000s, you know, and it has taken over my life. I am watching like 5 episodes a day. That's like 5 hours of TV. It's the best thing that's happened to me, and it's super girly, you would say, but it's everything. You know, I started reading it, and for the first 120 pages or so, I was really liking it. I was really loving the characters and their dialogue, the conversations, the gossip. But then it was just that. It became only that for me. And there was nothing else, and I started to lose interest, honestly. And by page 200, I felt like nothing really had happened. Nothing was really sparking my interest any further, and that was just kind of how it went for me. And I started to read a little bit, not as carefully as I usually do. I started to, read more quickly and skip some passages where I just scanned the paragraph, and I just saw a lot of characters' names being described, and, you know, she does a lot of description of these characters and what their families and the land, and if this is Lord whatever and Lady whatever, and they live in whatever Ishville and whatever Shire, and, you know, it's good, but I really wish that someone would take this entire text and kind of remake it and kind of make a more synthesized, summarized version of its substance, because I feel like its substance was really great, but there was a lot of crap. Not crap, like, no, I'm being disrespectful. Not crap. But there was a lot of detail and a lot of things that I did not need to know to enjoy this book, and which actually hindered me from really liking and enjoying myself while reading this book. So it's kind of a weird book for me to talk about and to rate. I gave it 3 stars because I think it's really interesting, but my reading experience was not a very satisfying one. But anyway, this video is already way too long, so thank you very much for watching. I am looking forward to reading your comments down below. Bye!